let me just say a little bit more on the Assumption of Moses. So there's things in the Assumption of Moses that, while it may be a document dating back to the time of Moses and kept in addition to the other writings and then carried through with the Jews either orally or in writing, at the time they date the text we have, the Latin text of the Assumption of Moses, to about the 1st century. And one of the reasons they do that is because in the text we have, it specifies the years 34 of a king, of a wicked king who would come, and of his sons. And it's the exact number of the years of Herod the Great that he ruled. And so that's either a predictive element in the Assumption of Moses regarding Herod, or information that was added to the text to create a fulfillment in some way with regard to Herod. And so you can understand why things like the Assumption of Moses are not in the collection of biblical texts, because they're not as reliable as the other writings. So while some of it may be accurate, right? Jude quotes from it, so clearly there was a document that they were using, or an oral tradition or understanding that they were using, that they accepted as consistent with the events of that time when Moses died. But not every single document was preserved with the same credibility and quality, or even entirely, so that some changes to the text could have been done, like specifying the number of years that Herod the Great ruled. So there are good reasons why we don't include all of these older texts in the Bible. It's not that they have no useful information. It's just that they're either incomplete, or there are things in them that may have been changed to fit certain time periods in ways that make the document less accepting, or less acceptable, so less credible. So we have references like Jude and from others like Galatius that give us clues in the ending of the lost ending of the Assumption of Moses. But the overall text that we have, while it has a good amount of material in Latin, we only have a few fragments in Greek, really just the quotations from Jude and Galatius. So it's just not an entirely reliable text. All right, so don't go thinking you can get the Assumption of Moses or get Tromp's edition without the lost ending, and you're going to get just this whole new document of reliable information. It's worth reading. It does have some interesting information, particularly about the tribes of Israel and their eventual separation into the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes. But it's not, you're going to read the English translation of a Latin text, and so it's not in every case going to make a lot of sense to you. But if you want to take a look at it, just keep in mind that it's not considered on the same level of credibility as the other biblical books, and for good reason. All right, so I wanted to make that point clear. So in case some of you, maybe you see Charles' edition, and Charles is he's a very he's a scholar, so he's not perfect. He makes mistakes like everybody else, but he's someone who people regularly use. And so you might find the Assumption of Moses in his volumes and think, well, here's more of the lost ending. No, most of that has been reconstructed. So be careful about that. Sometimes these scholars, and the reconstructions are not credible. Sometimes you can reconstruct a text based on partial words and the surrounding context. That's not what I'm talking about with the lost ending of the Assumption of Moses. It's pretty much gone, except for what we read in Jude and Galatius. So the reconstruction that you sometimes will see just is not reliable. Keep that in mind. Look to what Jude said. That's pretty much the most we're going to be able to determine at this point when it comes to the ending of what was known as the Assumption of Moses.